In talks you've given in the past, you've talked about model collapse, which isn't something we've talked about on the podcast before. So, how concerned are you about model collapse and what can be done? I mean, first of all, what is it? How concerned are you about model collapse and what can be done to mitigate it?
So the fundamental sort of challenge around model collapse is the notion that without human generated training data, so if it's all synthetic data, AI systems malfunction, and it at a large scale, this could be a real problem if if the internet becomes flooded with AI generated content that's synthetic data driven. Um, how worried am I? Listen, it's not a new problem. Let's start there. I mean, we've had this problem with content farms long before ChatGPT, long before Gen AI, and sort of so it's an understood problem, and we have at least some prior precedents on how it has been handled. The concerns around, again, singularity, I think we can mitigate first by developing approaches and ways to differentiate between artificially generated and human generated data. And to that end, a very nice precedent is sort of what we've seen historically, 10, 20 years ago with what Google did with Google search, where different sources of content had different weighing or different rankings in that context. So we can certainly tweak and change the weights on the AI side to be able to give more weight to human generated data versus sort of like the synthetic ones, and be able to differentiate that way. So it is a challenge to be overcome. We've faced it previously in the web era and other technologies, and I think we have some models that on the basis of which we can innovate to address it.
Nicely said, as with everything else that you've said so far in this episode. That was a great definition of model collapse. And yeah, something to be potentially concerned about. It is interesting how it is a tricky problem to be able to distinguish human written copy from machine generated copy. And the better that the algorithms get, like there were the kinds of tools like Zero GPT that were pretty good at distinguishing GPT 3.5 outputs from human outputs, but that then became a lot trickier with GPT 4. And so, yeah, it's a
I mean, I'll give you an example that's not exactly addressing this notion of model collapse, but certainly determining human generated versus AI generated algorithms and sort of code. We have a company that I will not name because they're still in stealth. I'll come back to you when they come out of stealth and we can update it. But they come at the world from a compliance, risk, and security point of view, going back to the CISO has to contend with, and the risk and the head of risk and whatnot, with regulations that are coming right and left around the proper use of data and proper use of AI. So the particular company we incubated it actually had basically goes into the enterprise and it's able to deliver an assessment of what is code that's AI generated and what's human generated, and can track it. And again, they've started at it from the point of view of compliance, risk management, and security. But one can quickly see how it can extend into productivity, how can it extend into starting with the first basis of assessing and knowing how much of your information is synthetically generated versus not, and then building from there in mitigating for it. So it's an area of interest for me and for us, I think, at Glasswing, and I suspect it will become more sort of front of mind for enterprises as adoption increases.